Brother Sulaiman. Brother Sulaiman.
Hello. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi. Go ahead, تفضل.
Hello, everyone. I hope everybody is doing okay today. Today we have a small speech about parenting, or talking about the parenting, our standing as a family. And we have the first speaker that we're gonna start with is Chaplain Darren. Correct? You are mute.
Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear us? Actually, if we could start out with Carolyn, she actually has, the women always have the best prize. So
Absolutely.
Ladies
Absolutely.
and gentlemen.
All right, we're gonna start with Carolyn, and let me present. Give me a little background about her. She serves as the president of the Relief Society, which is a woman organization for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saint, for the Greater Killeen Fort Hood area, leads by over 750 women. She has served in various capacities in other women and youth organizations in her church. She has studied marriage and family relationship at Baya, Idaho. She's important as being a wife and a mother and grandmother as well. Please go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to start this is the real bio that I should have had, right? So my husband is going to read a different bio that I wrote. All right, here we go.
So,
Okay.
so I want you to listen carefully to what is in this file, because it pertains to what she's going to talk about today. Mrs. Coleman was born and raised in Utah, the third of 11 children. After graduating from Orem High School, she earned a degree in home economics education. Following graduation, she co-founded the DCC Family Foundation. She remains co-chairman of this foundation today, expanding its reach across the nation, having been involved with the grassroots organizations of the DSS Family Foundation in Maryland, the GJM Foundation in Alabama, the LSF Family Foundation in Arizona, 3 additional organizations in Utah, including NMC, CGC, and ERM foundations, as well as in 2 in Idaho, the JJF and the JJC family foundations. She currently remains heavily involved on ongoing coaching, mentoring, and training in each of these organizations, and continues in the grassroots preparation for 2 additional family foundations she has planned to establish in the future.
Okay, I just had to have him read that because it made me feel really good about myself. I have letters behind my name now, and that makes me feel good. But I want to enlighten you just a little bit, okay? Let's see if you can see this. I can't see it very well, but I'm hoping you can. So this is the very first foundation I established, one with Darren and myself, and this is the DCC Foundation, Darren and Carolyn Coleman Foundation. Well, I'm also responsible for this foundation here. This is Daniel and Stephanie Family Foundation, and this foundation with Jacob and Jenna and Jessica and Rachel and Eric and their children. And I have, Leo and Sarah. I helped establish that foundation. Also, Darren and Nathan, Marissa, and Johanna and Garrett, and Jared and Jennifer and Charles and Gretchen. So those are all of the foundations I helped establish and that I give ongoing support to. And let's see, what were those cool words you said? Let's see, coaching, mentoring. Didn't I sound impressive when I had all of those letters behind my name? Man, it made me feel good. But you know what? I'm just a mom. And I'm a grandma. And these are our 14 grandchildren. And one more is going to be born in September. So if you were looking forward to somebody that had tons of letters behind their name, I'm sorry, I'm just a mother. And but I do have about 35 years of experience, so we should have some fun together. Now, when we have a poem that I wrote a while ago, that kind of shows you what our aim is and what I kind of focused on as I raised my children. And this is the poem. It says, our aim is not to have a house of which the world would dream, but rather have a home of love and hear the angels sing. Our aim is not to raise a child the world would think is grand, but rather raise a child who seeks to live the Lord's commands. Our aim, our goal, our victory will leave the world behind, as in each child's tender heart, the Spirit lights his mind. So that was our focus and our aim as we raised our children. We weren't too focused on having the biggest house and the most expensive car and 3 RVs in the driveway and a big boat and a whole bunch of jet skis. Those are things that the world thinks make you important and popular. Those aren't the things that God thinks, but looks on and says, this is a good family. So if you want to have a successful family, the first thing you have to do is focus on building a successful home. Not a big house, not a bunch of fancy toys, but have your focus in your heart on building a good home. The next part of that was that we didn't want to raise, okay, so let's talk about a home for a minute. All of those big fancy toys and things that people think are so fun and important and give them, a sense of importance in life and maybe think they have a successful family, all of those things cost something, and that's money. They all cost money. And then you have to go to work to earn the money. And so you're busy focusing on earning money. You're focusing that it's more important than your children. So we have to get away from focusing on those worldly things and have our needs met, yes, but not focus on a big fancy home and a big car and all of those things. We need to have our needs met. We need to eat healthy foods, and we need to have a place that we call home for our families to live in. And then we need to take care of them too, but they don't have to be perfect. My mother always used to say, in a factory that's always clean, there's probably not anything being produced. We have to be willing to have a little bit of a mess. Children are learning, right? We're growing children, and children they kind of take some messes in order to learn the things that they need to learn. But we can help them learn to work by giving them jobs and letting them do them. And then if they don't do a really great job, we just praise them for what they did do. That's what helps them be motivated to want to do more, to work harder. And when children are really young and they really are not a help at all, that's when they really want to help. And that's when they need to be allowed to help. Help them to feel successful and appreciated when they're 2 and 3 and they can't really help. It's more of a, it's harder to let them help than it is to just do it yourself. But that's when they really need to be allowed to help. So that's part of building a home. So home is how we teach and train our children. It's the feeling of love that resides in the place that we live. It's not about the house. It's about our home and about the love that we have there. The next part of that poem talks about that we don't want to raise a child that the world would think is grand. Now, we spend a lot of time raising children so that they'll fit in with the world. And then we wonder why they want to fit in with the world instead of want to follow God. We take them to baseball, we take them to art classes, we take them to music, we take them to dance. We're running all over the place, taking them to all of these activities, and we don't even have time to be in the house that we're also working so hard to have this big house that we have, instead of having time to be home with our children and teach them and train them and love them. All right, so we should give our children opportunities to grow and to learn and to develop talents and gifts that God has given them. But if all of our focus is on running from one activity to another, we won't have time to really do any parenting at all. So we need to cut back on some of those influences that draw us in because it makes us feel good and look good. Even all the degrees behind our name. Sometimes we focus too much on our education and not enough on the love that we have for our children and teaching them and training them. All right. So I think as we, in our family, we let them choose one or two things. They an art side, and then they could have a sports side. And sometimes there weren't any choices. They just got to be home this season. They don't need to be involved in something all the time, because then there's no time to just raise the child and to teach them the things that God wants them to know and to live by. So our aim, our goal, and our victory will be when we can leave the worldly things behind and let the child learn to hear his Heavenly Father, his God, in his life and live by his commands. That's what success should be for us as parents. And as we learn to listen to him, then he can guide us to help us to know what we need to do with our children and how much is too much. The other thing with keeping your children so heavily involved with outside activities is that even if you only have a couple of children, many times those activities conflict with each other. And so the father's with one child over here, the mother's with one child over here, and it becomes a problem with mothers and fathers being able to be a couple. And it's almost like what we need to remember and what we try to think about is that our relationship as a couple is the most important relationship in our family, and that the children should revolve around us, because we're like the sun. If the sun goes out, the family is no longer going to shine. It's not going to reflect what it should reflect. So we aren't selfish in that, but our children need to understand that our relationship is important too. And so our time together is important. Taking care of each other as a husband and wife keeps the family safe. And the children need to understand that. They shouldn't be playing mom against dad, and every kid tries to do that. And you just have to continually fight to stay in that position, that they understand that they are not the sun, that you and your spouse are the sun, and they are the planets that revolve around you, and that will keep your family strong. So that is just introducing our our parenting philosophy. And I'm going to let Darren take over from here.
Before, are there any questions?
I think I can come up with one question, if you wouldn't mind.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, very valuable points, actually. But can you share with us example point and of how you would train them out of the outside activity and schools? Because all of us as a parents, we all almost focus on either their activities or schoolwork, and we completely forget that we're supposed to train them in some kind of other things, which is you are aiming at. But can you give us a life example at this?
Yes. We need to take time at least once a week to spend time as a family, to be studying about so whatever you notice during the week that your children are struggling with, to take time to take an hour or so to focus on that. We have what's called family home evening. So one night a week, that's what we do. We take some time to focus on whatever challenge and problem that is. We also have family council, which is more like once a month. If we're lucky, sometimes we don't do it that often. And then we start to fall apart. And so we've got to counsel together and figure out those things that that we need to do that are really important. Every day we study the Word of God. Every day as a family and as individuals, we encourage that. We encourage prayer every day. And you are very good at that. So, but those things are important. Those are some of the small, simple things that we can do that help our families to be focused on God and on what He wants for our family, rather than what the world says we need for our family. Is that helpful, or do you want some more specific?
I was just thinking, like a lot of times it's easy to get so wrapped up in to going to this ball game, that music lesson, this and that, for example, and studies have shown nowadays that families hardly ever eat supper together. And so we have made it a point that we eat supper together, because that's a great time to be able to just talk about things. And, and if there are issues that come up in school or whatever may happen, that we can talk about values, using that time to mentor them in those different type of things. We also, as she mentioned, with the family council, we sit down once a month and we go through everybody's schedule as best as possible. And so we can figure out what all the schedules are. And at that point, we make decisions on whether we can really adequately do those things, whether it's feasible, obtainable, and any expenses involved, whatever it may be. So we talk about those things to, because we want the kids to be able to feel like they can do stuff. We don't want them to feel like they're trapped at home every single second, but we do want them to be able to know that home is home, and we just have certain times that we just need to be together as a family. Saturdays, for example, are a good day that we try to at least spend time in the morning together, whether it's out in the garden or doing some chores or just having fun, and sometimes even in the afternoon with barbecues or whatever. But we just try to make sure that we dedicate blocks of time throughout the week for our family. So
We also counsel with our children individually to just see how they're doing. And if you're not home with your children, it's really difficult to really talk to them and see how they're doing. it, people from the outside telling you that your children are wonderful and all of that, that's encouraging sometimes, but if you as a parent really need to be in tune with how they're really feeling on the inside and what they're really thinking about on the inside. And you can only do that through one-on-one time with them in comfortable setting. So it's not like, okay, now we're going to sit down and I'm going to talk to you and you're going to tell me, you know. And if that only happens every once in a while, where you're only talking to them, you know, in an interview form, then they're not going to share with you what they need to share. When they're young, they want to talk to you all the time, and they'll tell you stories about exact details about what they did, and you're like, oh, I have things to do, you know. That's how we might feel on the inside, because it's just gibberish, you know. But if you'll listen to them during those times, they'll continue to share what is in their heart and what they're excited about when they're teenagers, when they want to shut down, when they want to, when, you know, the whole world is telling them not to. But if you build that good relationship and you're the person they go to talk to, they will come to you when they're older with their other problems and with the things that they're excited about, you know, then, you know, just whatever it is. So it's important to build those relationships when they're young. And one thing like about with cleaning your home, it's easier, like I said, to do things yourself. But when your children, you just have to work that into your routine. Like he said, we always have meals together. And after our meals, we all work together to clean up until the work is done. And then when it's bedtime, when the children were young, we would have them help pick their toys up and put them away, just teaching them how to take care of their things and not just them just expect us to do all the work. I wanted to show you this picture, if I can think of where I sent it to. Oh, let's see this one. Okay, so yesterday, my son, who is 10 or 11, almost 12, he came to me and he said, Mom, I had a talk with myself this morning, and I decided that I was going, he had earned some money, but he said, I decided I wanted a $100 bill. I wanted to hold a $100 bill that I had earned. And so he went out and he got lawns to mow and he walked dogs. And I don't know if you can see that, but that's him holding his first $100 bill that he earned all that money for. And so he brought the money to me and exchanged it for that $100 bill. And that sometimes we think we have to earn all the money for our children. Teaching them that they can earn money for themselves and allowing them to do that. My kids have sold popsicles on the street, you know, in front of the house. They've sold wreaths, they've done things. And sometimes I just want to crawl in a hole and think, oh my goodness, you're selling what? You know, or whatever. But if we allow them to explore those things, that when they get an idea and we allow them to do that, then they will be prepared. They'll be confident enough to do things for themselves when they're older. And so we won't be stuck trying to support our children when they're, you know, 20, 30, you know, and many families have trouble with that. And we have this idea, I think, from the world again, that is the parents' job, is to make sure that our children have everything they need all the time. But it really isn't. It's our job to teach our children to become independent and self-reliant and be able to be productive citizens. That's our job as parents. It's not our job to provide everything for them. It's our job to ensure that they learn to provide for themselves. That's why we have a garden. That's why they have to weed it, and we help them. And that's why we have them help with the lawns and do all of that stuff, so they can learn skills that then they can put into practice and become self-reliant and independent.
Yeah, this year both of our lawnmowers broke about a month ago. Well, one wasn't working anyway, and then the other one broke. And so my oldest son, and he mows a lot of lawns, and so he was like, oh no, what do we do? And I said, well, let's YouTube it, see what we can figure out. And so we both learned how to fix our carburetors on the lawnmower. And now we have two that are working. And he did most of it. So
Well, I always say there is a certificate for everything, but there is no any certificate for parenting. Or I think before, getting children, they should go to some schooling to learn how to be a parent. Unfortunately, it's missed out. I think it's clear right now. What should we do other than start taking care of the education, schooling, activities, and the life example that you give? It's pretty impressive. Pretty impressive. Thank you for that.
Welcome.
Okay. Chaplain Darren, are you? Would you take over now?
absolutely. So at- oh yes, are you able
Yes.
to share the screen?
Yes, it is eligible for you to share. It's allowed.
Oh, okay.
You can.
So let me get this up. And can you guys see it?
No, till now, no.
Oh, okay.
The green bottom,
Go back, just make it.
the green.
Okay, okay. Hold on one sec. I'm gonna
Okay.
make this. There we go.
Share
Now,
screen.
oh, okay. Now I got to get back to the Zoom. Okay, here we go. Okay, the green bottom. There we go. All right.
I will.
So-
I will let you. I will let you to introduce yourself at this time. Okay. I'm not gonna take it over.
All right. So here we are.
Yes.
There we go. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Guys, no, Carol and I are the parents of 10 children and grandchildren almost. We're having a little grandchild in September.
Excuse me. Excuse me. I think you need to get closer to the mic or the device a little bit.
Okay, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
That's good. That's good.
Okay, thank you. All right, so as I mentioned, as you saw, we have a big family and we love our kids. As I know that everyone, as parents, we should love our kids, right? And but one thing that we wanted to make sure that everybody knew was that we are not perfect. And we have had our share of mistakes. We've had our little moments of, let's say, excitement and drama. And so, but that's all part of learning and growing. I wish that there were the perfect handbook of parenting, but no matter how many articles there are written about parenting, there's great ideas, but just as Carolyn mentioned, the most important thing that you can do is follow the promptings of the Lord to be able to teach your children and help them learn in the light and knowledge of our faith. So our own experience, being a chaplain, I was a military chaplain and I served 20 years, 28 years, including enlisted time. But we traveled through many different states and I was deployed twice and served an unaccompanied tour in Korea. My deployments were in Iraq and Jordan. I had the opportunity, by the way, to work quite a bit with the Grand Mufti of the Jordanian Armed Forces and his staff. It was an incredible experience, and that was my first real opportunity to gain understanding of the beauty of Islam and just the gifts and wonderful things that the Islam brings to the table. And all of us in our own different way, if you were to think of a tossed salad, there's some people that are lettuce, some are carrots, and some are radishes, whatever, I'll say I'm the onion, because I like to add a little extra spice, right? But we all have special gifts. And if the world can just recognize that, then think about how wonderful the world would be. But as we know, no nation, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but no nation can rise above the foundation and the strength of its family. That was a quote that was by a leader of our church many years ago. So today what I'd like to do is just talk about the ABCs, getting back to the basics. So I don't know if you guys remember this person or not. This one. Okay. Well, you know what? I don't know why it's not going, but that's okay. We're just going to move on. But for those that are into football, Vince Lombardi, he was a famous Green Bay Packer coach, and they were like in the semifinals of this game, and it was back in 1966, heading to the Super Bowl, and they went in the locker room, and he says, "Gentlemen," and he held up a football, and he says, "This is a football. Let's get back to the basics." And they went out and they ended up winning the whole game. So it was a really cool experience. We can just, oh, there we go. We can just go down. You know what? We won't worry about the slides. Yeah. Okay. So she's going to flip us back over there. All right. But anyway, that small quote motivated the team enough that that they went on to win the Super Bowl as well. Now, with the experiences that we all have, sometimes we feel like we're losing the game. But that is a false assumption. That is Satan trying to tell us and tempt us to not be successful. And so we have to disregard that, because no one, as I mentioned, is perfect except for God, right? And so sometimes the greatest challenges that exist are the very things that could actually help us to be successful. So with the life with all the complexities that it has and all the pitfalls, here we'll just go back to the Zoom. There we go. Okay. Anyway, but with all the complexity, with all the pitfalls, with all the political stuff, this and that, and all the things that just seem to be encompassing us, if we remember that our family is the most important gift that God has given to us, and the most important responsibility that God has given to us, then truly we'll understand that quote when he said, "No nation can rise above the foundation or the strength of its family." So building strong families is an ongoing process. And even we found that even after our children get married, we may not be able to you pray with them, like, at nighttime or whatever, but we definitely pray for them. And, for their families, for their posterity, for our posterity, because of, there's so many temptations out there. And I would say that the biggest foundation tool that we must set in our homes is love. So today in the ABCs, we're going to talk about 3 things that can help bring the love into our home. So I want everybody to picture yourself going back in time, all the way back to kindergarten. And what was the very first thing that you learned in kindergarten? May have been in Arabic, but regardless of which language, you typically learn the ABCs, right? And so today we're going to talk about A, B, and C. A is for our attitudes. We can choose how our attitude's going to be, whether good or bad, whether happy or sad. It's completely up to us how we're going to be. And that is a rule that God has given to us. It's a gift that we have agency to be able to choose that. One of the studies that they did, if you've ever read Man's Search for Meaning by, let's see, what was his name? Victor Hugo, I believe. Anyway, it was about a doctor that was in the concentration camp, that the thing that he noticed that held the people together that were going through really hard times was choosing to be positive. Even if no matter what they went through, if they could keep positive, they were more likely to survive than those that didn't. So what kind of attitudes do you carry in your home? You carry an attitude like always walking around with a chip on your shoulder, just being grumpy, or do you try to create a positive environment in your home? What if someone does something offensive? How do you handle that situation? If they're feeling like they're irritating you, how do you handle that situation? There's nothing worse than walking on eggshells inside your own home, not feeling safe to be able to communicate, not feeling safe to be able to just be who you are. And some people just have to feel like they have to smile all the time because that's what's expected of them. And honestly, when I was growing up, sometimes that was a challenge for us, because of the expectation that we always had to be happy. So even if we're feeling miserable, but it's okay to feel whatever feelings you're feeling. It's just being able to learn how to control those feelings and be able to put them in that energy in the right direction. One of the scenarios that typically happens, and I think that we're all guilty of doing this, is that it's easy to assume things that may not necessarily actually be, but we think it is because that is our worldview. But every one of us have filters that help make who we are, but it doesn't always necessarily mean that's how the other person actually is, or that's not what the situation actually is, whatever it may be. So when we begin to assume, then we begin to presume, and then we begin to fume, right? And that's not good. That's not healthy for families. And so instead of casting judgment, we need to look for, what we need to look for understanding. So instead of judgment, we need to look for understanding, how to understand the child. Countless studies have shown that habits of having attitudes ready and willing to assume and presume and fume will do exactly that and will be overwhelming throughout their life. It creates toxicity, it creates distraction, frustration, stress, anxiety, paranoia, and fear. It also creates some severe health issues such as high blood pressure and hypertension and depression and obesity and so forth. So by the time that all's said and done, when others are just fed up, people that are trying to have a good attitude, finally get fed up and then they explode because, so those are the things that we want to eliminate having to do. And the most important way that we can do is by controlling our own attitude. We cannot control anybody else, but we can control ourselves. All right. So with that in mind, realize now then that there's 3 things that you can do to improve your attitude. First of all, look for the good in everything, because in every little thing, no matter how bad it is, there's going to be some good that comes out of it. So number 2, have an attitude of gratitude, because that experience that you may have had, while it seemed like it was a cursing for the moment, may be the very blessing that you need in your life. And number 3, if you take the opportunity to share your experiences with others, your learning opportunities, then it will be a blessing to them as well. And oh, by the way, it makes you feel good for being able to share and encourage someone else that's going through a hard time as well. So let's go to B. There's a couple words in B. The first one is believe, and the other one is behavior. It is important, foundational, in not only believing in God and in the things that he does for us as far as faith, but it's just as important to believe in ourselves and to believe in our families. Because if we do that, it will build trust and confidence within each family member when they know that you believe in them and are excited about them. Every person has special gifts in all of our families. There's a reason why that person is there. And we have the opportunity to learn from those special gifts. Sometimes they may come in ways you least expect and may try your patience a little bit, but that's okay. Those things are okay. So realize that either, I don't know if you're familiar with the psychologist Alfred Bandura, but he said either you can become a producer of your environment or a producer or a product of your environment. And the people that produce their environments have positive belief patterns in God, in themselves, and in others. So the next thing is now behavior, because as we know, our attitudes affect our behaviors, and our beliefs actually affect our attitudes. So it kind of goes all hand in hand. Multiple studies have been shown about how the correlation between parents' behaviors and children's behaviors. Now, I want you to think for a moment. Think of the child that does that one thing the most irritating to you. That might be a great opportunity to look at yourself in the mirror, because I definitely can say I have had to do that many times. I mean, there's a lot of good things that you can see in your children that remind you of yourself or remind you of your spouse, whatever. But on some of the behaviors that may be negative that they do, it would be good to take a look at ourselves. They just recently did a study on social media behavior and cell phone, always being on the cell phone, texting and the internet and this and that. And parents tell their kids, you cannot have more than 30 minutes of screen time or whatever per day. And but then on the other hand, parents are always, because their stuff's important, right? And so then their kid comes up and tries to talk to them about a very, very important issue, and they're sitting there doing this, and the study shows that kids feel neglected. They won't tell you. They will not tell you that they're feeling neglected. But just as she mentioned earlier, there's those times when the kids could have or would have been able to talk to us that we kind of bounced them off because we were so interested in what was happening on the screen. So let's remember the kids are watching us. They're watching how we react. If we freak out every single time there's one little issue or a big issue even, or if we act out in love and service and whatever, they watch. So it's important for us to be careful about that. So you have something you'd like to say?
Yeah, I just thought that I don't know if you're familiar with the bad relationship behavior. It's kind of like a circle. And you've got the bad behavior on the outside of the circle, like withdrawing or yelling or just throwing a tantrum, whatever. Those are bad behaviors that we don't really want to see in our children. But when we see those, usually they are the result of either anger or anxiety. And those are secondary emotions. So if you have a big circle there, you could draw these in there. And then, but the anxiety and anger is usually the result of primary emotions, which are hurt, fear, shame, disappointment, and loneliness. Those primary emotions are the result of needs that are not being met. So our children have needs just like all of us do. And those needs are security, love and connection, autonomy, respect and fairness, growth and progress, competence, and acceptance. So look at what needs that your children are not getting met when they're exhibiting all these bad behaviors that are not socially acceptable, or that are not, I mean, they just need to have their needs met. So pay attention to that and see what is missing so that you can help them to overcome those actions and those behaviors. And even with your spouse or with other people, oftentimes it's because of a lack of our needs being met that we act a certain way.
Yeah. So here's an interesting thing for most of us that grew up, in the 60s. Our parents would say, "Don't do this," or if you're exhibiting behavior issues, right? And then as time has gone on, people have taken a little bit more time to explain why. For us that grew up earlier, it's like, I don't need to tell you why. I don't, you know what I mean? But the more that we can be able to try to seek for understanding of why their behavior is doing that, and also letting them know, I love you, but the behavior that you're exhibiting right now is not appropriate. And then explain why. This is why. And so the more that we can do that and communicate positively, the more secure they're going to feel inside, instead of just feeling like they're always doing wrong things at the wrong time, whatever it may be. So, so the last thing is now on to C, and the biggest C, of course, is commitment. If we're not committed to our families, I mean, I think that all of us want to be committed, obviously, to our faith and to our families, but in the Army they have this little slogan: acts, not words. And so I say I'm committed, but as soon as I get home, or as soon as I get done with work, I want to go to this place and that place and this and that, and then when I get home, I'm going to play video games, and and maybe even with the kids, I don't know, but a lot of people, there have been a lot of divorces as a result of the mismanagement of time like that. But the big bottom line, it was the lack of commitment that the other person felt in their marriage because of those type of things. But commitment obviously is the most important thing. Until a firm foundation is made that a family will do whatever it takes to make a marriage and family work out, nothing else can fall into place. But once parents decide, on being completely committed, then things will begin to follow. Committed to their faith, committed to each other, and then to their children. There are times that when the kids were being a little bit obnoxious, I would say, I want you to know that I love you, but I love my wife more because I married her so we could have you, and they're like, well, that's not fair. Well, it is fair because, it just like what she was saying, we are kind of like, it's not that we want everything to be centered around us in every little aspect. We want to meet the kids' needs, but we want them to know that we are the team that brought them here, and that we need to work together so that their life can be happy and meaningful. So, along with commitment, there's a couple other words called consistency and creativity. In the consistency, I know you guys do prayers and scriptures and so forth. The consistency in family time, consistency in date time, going out with your wife once a week, Consistency in time for important things to take place, consistency in discipline, consistency in the rules that you have in your family, consistency in your routines, consistency in the way that you communicate so that they feel safe. Because if one day you're really happy and then, 2 hours later, then you're completely opposite, it's hard for them to be able to feel that love that they should. And so consistency in positive behaviors and attitudes is important. And same with creativity. There's a lot of things that we may do that are the same thing over and over again. And if we do that, our kids will be bored out of their mind. But we can make things fun for them, still accomplish the same thing, but make it fun. For example, you can tell your kids, go clean your room. Or you can say, hey, first one with their room done is the winner, or whatever. And maybe have something fun at the end. But, just thinking of different things that you can do to make the mundane things that they have to do, in a fun way, always goes a long ways. Spontaneousness. There's times that we would go on, like, I could just tell, when she was expecting one of the children, or she's having a hard day with the baby. I mean, dads can just tell, you know what, tonight might be a good night for me to take kids bowling or something, so she can just have time to air out. And she's had a hard day with the kids, whatever. And so be spontaneous. Sometimes we would take just rides just out in the wilderness to get away from everything for a little bit. One time when we lived in Utah, we drove all the way down to California. We thought that we would just drive, 2 hours later and have a little break. And then we realized we needed a bigger break than just a little break. So we decided to drive all the way to California. And it was a long drive that day, but it was a fun drive. And we ran out of gas at midnight on the way back. So anyway, creativity works with discipline in teaching the values. I grew up in a life where if you did something bad, then you got spanked for it. I mean, that's just the way it was. But we definitely can be more creative than disciplining in a negative way. Hold on a second, our electric cord. Yeah. But there's so many different ways that we can be able to discipline in a positive way. And instead of, making some consequence be bad, we can give them a reward for good behavior instead. And so those are important things as well. So commitment, consistency, and creativity, to me, are the 3 C's of success. Because once you've made a commitment to have and be a successful family, and you're consistent in your goals and your vision, even when you don't feel like doing it, and you're creative, then everything else will fall into place. Finally, the last thing I want to talk about is time. We need to make sure that we have time to be able to be consistent. And it does take time. It's, as she mentioned, sometimes so easy to do things yourself instead of having your kids do it. But if you take that time that is needed, it will be meaningful. When I was deployed, for example, as she mentioned, on Monday nights, we had family home evening. Well, sometimes on Monday nights, I'd call and we would have the lesson together and try to do an activity together. A couple times when I was in Korea, when I had a stove, we would cook the same recipe together. And so that was a lot of fun. And so another essential part is not only time, but being able to say no. There are just certain times you just need to say no. We would love to do that. Maybe we can do that next week, but right now, let's just say no. Now with that though, on the other hand, you're going to have times when you have no moments. And those moments are when when something happens and you go, ah, no, why did that happen? But you can simply turn those no moments into an acronym called NO, which means new opportunity to grow, and look at it in a different way. So, and finally, the most essential thing in all of the things that we've talked about today, as I know we're starting to get short on time, but is being able to keep God in the plan. In fact, if we put him first in our lives, then all else will be added. Do your very best and God will take care of the rest. Be faithful and true and he will bless you. And so I hope that even though all of this sounds perfect, and I mean, you know, none of us are perfect. Well, forget every now and again we may exhibit some behaviors that are less desirable than others, but the most important thing is that we're trying and striving to live the best that we can. So, any questions?
If anybody has a question, please go ahead. There is no bad or good questions. All the questions are good. Well, to be honest with you, I have about like bunch of questions, but we don't have enough time for that. But if somebody else has a question, please tell us. Okay, I think I have 2 minutes. I have a couple of things that I would like to highlight that you said, and actually both of you talked about it, and I have to come up with this first. The relationship between the parents is a sunshine, and she mentioned that, and you mentioned that. Both of you mentioned that, and in my opinion, a lot of us neglect the relationship between the parents, and the sacrifice that we need to take care of our children. That's a highlighting for your points. Probably is one of the most important things. And you mentioned something very nice, that we also, all of us, believe in Islamic believe that not everything is good, and not everything is bad. Not everything bad is bad. Sometimes bad things are like leading to a good stuff, and vice versa. And the question that I want to ask you is actually, when you talked about commitments. Commitment, in my opinion, is not sustainable. Sometimes we have a commitment. For example, we need to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, okay, every day, and we need to go to sleep early. So what happened when that we fall off that commitment? I mean, we do that for a week, a month, and after that we start to go back to the old habits, you know?
Yes.
Can you just enlighten us on how we renew the commitment that we have briefly? I know, because we have about 1 minute or 2 minutes or something, whatever.
Sure. Okay, so first of all, actually, I think what I hear you saying, so first of all, the commitment is our goal and desire to have a happy family. That's where the core commitment is, that we will raise a family to God. The consistency is what I think that you're saying, because sometimes it's
Correct.
hard to be
The consistency
consistent.
of the commitment.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. Correct.
Because I will say it happens all the time, but the more consistent that we can become, the better. For example, when I was a baker, trying to make the donuts consistently the same size so that people felt like they were getting the money's worth. But then there were certain days that for whatever reason, the dough would shrink and it'd be like the same size as a donut hole. So I'd have to sell 10 for $1 or whatever, you know. But, and so then the boss would get mad at me, right? But the more that we can be consistent, the better. And so when you lose that feeling of feeling like you're losing that consistency, to me, that's the time when you sit back with and talk to your spouse, and first, obviously, and counsel together and say, hey, what are some ways that we can get back onto the thing and get consistent? And then counsel with your kids, sit down with them, say, hey, you know, starting on this day, we have felt like that because of, you know, some issues here that we need to get back on a schedule. How do you guys feel about it? And more often than not, they appreciate it too, because they're feeling like everything's muffled.
I want to emphasize very important point over here. It's okay to fail. It's okay to, it's natural to fail and come back, start from the beginning again.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, that's what repentance is about, right? And repentance can be a very daily, for me, is a daily occurrence. but I mean, that's the beauty of it. Some people see repentance as a bad thing, but it's a good thing, because repentance simply means change. And the more that we contemplate things, the more likely we're going to make changes in our lives.
Very good and very informative, and we will I don't think it's enough to talk about that. We can talk about this for so many hours, but driving from Utah to California these days is very expensive, so don't expect us to do that.
Yes. That's right.
Okay. Now we're gonna move on to the next speaker, Brother Osman. Brother Osman Dunkwa. He is the president of the Islamic Clean Islamic Center, and that's located in Clean. And he's been in the military for 26 years. Am I correct about that? 22 years, okay. And he's very active member, and it's pleasure to be working with him in the Islamic Center. It's amazing personality. So now you can take it off from here.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد. Today, the subject matter is parenting. I have been asked to speak on parenting. I would like to preface my lecture by saying that I am not an expert on parenting. Although I have raised 4 biological children, 2 stepchildren, and nephews and nieces as well. For the most part, they are reasonably successful. The information that I will present to you today will be based on my experience as a parent, my training as a human relations instructor, counselor, and advisor, and the research I did for this lecture. I hold a BSc degree from American Technological University in social service and rehabilitation. And as Brother Suleiman mentioned, I spent 22 years in the military in the area of, worked in the area of personnel management, advisor to commanders on human relation matters, and also taught human relations. On the flyer the Imam sent me, it says, "Standing strong as a family, our aim." So we will take that heading and run with it. And many of the things that have been said, it kind of dovetails. It dovetails into the presentation that I have here today. For the family to be strong, mothers and fathers must agree to a certain set of shared values that are fundamental to the growth and development of the family. They must agree on the goals and objectives to be achieved, commitment to each other, and what it means to be a parent. First, let us examine the definition of parenting. Using an amalgamation of sources, Webster's Dictionary, Collins Dictionary, Cambridge Dictionary, and other sources, it is safe to say that elements of parenting include, but not limited to the following. The process of number one, the process of raising a child from birth to independent adulthood. Number two, establishing a healthy environment as the child grows. That means taking action to ensure social development and education that aligns with your values. Number three, providing a financially stable home life, which is not the same as being wealthy. Number four, parenting is a journey on the pathway to life to get your children to grow up to become independent adults. This should be the aim, the goal, the objective of every parent. When a child is born, he or she comes with no manual. Every child is different. Children develop differently, have different personalities, possess different strengths and weaknesses, and require different kinds of support to meet their individual needs. Parents have to have a long view for their children. Ali radiallahu anhu is reported to have said, and I quote, "Raise your children for the world in which they will live, not the world in which you are living." From this long view, we learn that one of the main aims of parents should be to prepare their children to lead independent lives when they transition into adulthood with all the complexities and challenges. To accomplish the goal of each child living an independent life when he or she becomes an adult, there are 6 things that I consider as essential. Number 1, deen or faith. Number 2, education in deen and dunya, meaning education in faith and the world of life. Number 3, the habit of saving. Number 4, access to capital. Number 5, access to healthcare. Number 6, land/home. Let's deal first with faith. Faith enables the child to overcome difficulties, to face challenges, to overcome or circumvent obstacles because he or she understands and believes that these experiences are a part of life and they make us who we are. When there is a storm on the sea of life, faith gives us a safe harbor to sail into and shelter from the storm of life. Faith or deen is like a base or airstrip on which to land safely after a day of flying in the skies of life. Parents should raise their children to have faith or deen and to believe in the one God and trust in God. Number 2, education. Education enables you to learn, to think, to ponder, to reflect, to consider, and to analyze. This is a high achievement that every child should go after. Education or knowledge will improve your condition and help you to understand the nature of things around you. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is reported to have said, acquire knowledge. It enables its possessor to distinguish right from wrong. It lights the way to heaven. It is our friend in the desert, our society in solitude, our companion when friendless. It guides us to happiness. It sustains us in misery. It is an ornament among friends and an armor against enemies, unquote. Parents have the responsibility to educate their children, prepare them for the world in which they will live, to instill in them that learning is a lifelong pursuit. They must continue to learn throughout their time on this earth. Education is from the cradle to the grave. Number 3, the habit of saving. It is important that parents teach their kids the habit of saving. Almighty God does not like the spendthrift. In Surah Al-Isra 17:26 through 27, it reads, and I quote, but spend not wastefully your wealth in the manner of a spendthrift. Verily, spendthrifts are brothers of the Satans, and the Satans is to his Lord ungrateful. Parents should have a sense of economics. The habit of saving is part of economics. What is economics? Simply put, it is the choice you make in the deployment or use of limited resources to satisfy unlimited wants and unlimited desires. Children should be taught how to make wise choices with the limited resources available. Number 4, access to capital. Capital or money is needed for the acquisition or purchase of the things we need in this world of life. The habit of saving will give you access to capital. This will enable you to afford the necessities of life and the ability to secure goods and services for your family, independent of your parents. Access to healthcare. Healthcare is essential from birth to death. Children and adults are afflicted with all kinds of ailments and disease, and they must have access to medical care. Children must be immunized against preventable childhood diseases. And when sick, they must get medical attention. Parents must ensure that they are healthy and that their children grow healthy. Number 6, land/home. When the birds get ready to make a family, they build a nest. Man is the only animal that goes out and rents a nest. Parents should teach their children the importance of owning their own home when they grow into adulthood and what it means to be independent. Meaning independent of the parents. Not staying at home after the period of time that they should have transitioned into adulthood. They sit at home playing video game at age 19, age 20, and sit at home playing a video game. It is important to note that all children develop at their own pace and in their own way. What parents bring to the table are values, goals and objectives, love, compassion, patience and perseverance, communication, consistency, and a sense of duty. Our children are a manual, a trust given to us by God. Children grow and develop at different rates. While their developmental path may differ, most pass a set of predictable checkpoints along the way to adulthood. It is normal for children to experience developmental growth spurts and also slow growth in varying areas of their development over time. If the child is a little ahead or a little behind at certain age, this is considered normal. In most cases, given the right nurturing and stimulation, all children will grow up, all children will catch up in the end. Children have different strengths and weaknesses. Some are good at sports, others in the arts. Some are very academic, while others are not. Some are very anxious, while others are more relaxed. Some kids are good sleepers. They sleep the whole night through, while others are awake through the night and do so for many years. The bottom line is that all kids are not the same, and we have to treat each one as an individual. It is important that parents should feel confident that they are on the right track. Many parents feel like they are under increasing pressure to get their parenting skills right, while others feel under pressure to do well in raising their children who are expected to succeed in school, in recreation, in relationships, and in employment. Many parents feel that parenting doesn't come naturally to them. Some parents sometimes lack self-confidence to know they are parenting in the way that best meets their individual child's needs. Some parents feel like they are being judged by others about their parenting approach. Experiences like these can leave some parents feeling alone and isolated. Many parents feel that no one else, no other parent is going through the same or similar experiences. It is important to point out that these are common experiences and feelings. The job of parenting consistently changes. As the children grow and their needs and abilities change in the course of time, you have to possess different strategies in your toolkit to deal with the changing circumstances of the kids. To borrow an expression, one size does not fit all when it comes to parenting. What works for one child may not work for another. What worked when children were 2 years old may not work when they are 4 or 7 years old. Adaptability and flexibility are the key ingredients in parenting. Children don't come with a manual. It is normal to lack confidence in your parenting sometimes. To gain confidence, you can share your experiences with other parents, friends, and family. You will find out you are not alone. Sharing common experiences can reassure you that you are on the right track and give you improved confidence. Trust that you know your child better than anyone else and avoid comparing your child to others. If you are concerned about your child or need support with your parenting, seek assistance. This is a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness. In conclusion, parenting is a journey from the birth of the child until he or she is transitioned into independent adulthood, with emphasis on independent. As Ali radiallahu anhu said, raise your children for the world in which they will live, not the world in which you are living. I trust that you will find this information useful and beneficial. And that concludes my segment of the lecture. And so if there are any questions, I will entertain question at this time.
I think we have enough time for more questions. Anybody have any simple question for us? Well, as usual, I have one, if you wouldn't mind. Can I? We still have 5 minutes.
Shoot.
Yeah. You talked. Okay, I'm gonna start with the most important one right now that I think that took my attention. You mentioned that if you have an issue, seek an assistant, and also Chaplain Coleman, in his last point, which is share with others if you have issue. He mentioned the same exact point as you mentioned, which is a lot of us are really shy to. Really shy to go and share personal information with the church or the mosque or for example, in our community, how can you share the information and what level of information that we share, and what the most important part that is when we should share the information. Sometimes when we start to talk about the problem, get a lot bigger and bigger. Can you talk us a little bit? How can we try on our own, and if it's not working enough, now we can share it with the community, which could be the church, could be the mosque, could be the synagogue, could be a therapy.
Well, number one, don't look at it as a problem. Look at it as a challenge. As we go through life, we face challenges. And so what do we do when we are faced with challenges? We find ways and means to overcome those challenges. Depending on the tools that you have, the skills that you have, the training you have, the education and training, determine, okay, I've tried this or tried that, it's not working. Are there others who are having similar issues? Yes, there are other parents having similar issues. So you want to talk to the people who can assist you. You wouldn't talk to a person about children if somebody don't have any children. Or have training or education and training in this particular area. You want to talk to somebody who have children, particularly if you have grown children. They have all this experience behind them, raising the children. Said, okay, I was faced with this or similar situation, and this is how I handle it. Or you go to the imam or someone that you respect in the community who have children or experience raising children, and say, you know, this is what I'm experiencing. Have you ever had this experience? Said, yeah, I had this experience. And how did you deal with it? This is how I dealt with it. And so you're exchanging information. He's going into his set of tools and sharing with you what tool he pulled out of his toolkit to resolve that situation. And so that may work for you, it may not, because all children are different. So it's important that you know your kids. The other thing is there's so many things that impact a child. Some children have ADD, ADHD, attention deficit disorder, attention deficit and hypertensive or hyperactive disorder. And so you have to look what challenges my child or my children are faced with. And so you might need to talk to somebody who, a physician who is trained in this area to help you to navigate your way through this situation. If they have hyperactive or attention deficit disorder or other issues that affect the cognitive function.
I agree with you. It's a very good point. It is just I'm just talking as a parent, a normal parent. It's really not easy. Yeah, you have to be selective who you're gonna talk to, who you're gonna share this information with, and exchange the tool, not with everybody left and right, so the problem doesn't get bigger and worse.
Somebody you trust.
Correct. And it's no problem to share the issue in order to learn from others. Otherwise, we're not gonna learn, because the more we share information and the more we share with others who are really qualified to share with, the more we learn. We will never stop learning. We are not perfect.
And learning is from cradle to the grave. Knowledge, cradle to the grave.
Absolutely.
And you can learn from your children. You can learn from others.
Yes, and actually, I would like to share one point that you mentioned, that every child is different. Yesterday we were in somewhere in Roanoke, that's an expo for like bunch of educational. They are teaching in Williamson County how to take care of your children, mostly focus on homeschoolers, the people who has homeschooling kids, or even in a school, that's still fine. But you were mentioning that every child is different. We get deceived with the first one. Oh, it's easy, everything is gonna be glory with the first one, so the second one's gonna be the same. And once you see the second one, you see that, oh my goodness, this is not the same like the first one. And the third one comes, it's like I'm give up. This is
And
not.
they don't come with a manual.
Go ahead, talk us about this, because it's really important, because we got deceived that we have to deal with them, all of them, as the same.
No, you have to learn, study your children, each one of them. They're different, and know their differences. What motivates, and so by studying them, understanding them, treat them with respect, treat them with dignity, show them love, show them compassion, show them understanding. But that doesn't also take away from discipline. You also have to provide discipline, and you have to be consistent. It is important that that you're consistent, and consistency is vitally important. Where we say, don't be wishy-washy. You know, the important thing is to determine where we want our children to go. We want them to grow up to be independent adults. What it takes to get them there. So there are a certain set of values. There are certain things that you need to instill in the children to get them where they need to be. And so how do you get each child, even though they are different, to buy into those values, to buy into the program, and to get them from the child, from the moment they're born, all the complexities, all the challenges that you go through, and we have an objective. We have a goal. The goal is to get them all the tools they need, educational and otherwise, to get them to grow up to be independent adults.
Yes, I agree with you. I just and we admit that the first one is not just like the second one.
No.
And if it's not working with the second one, what you did with the first one,
You have
yes,
to
it
adapt.
is okay. It's natural. It's natural. Change your strategy, and
You have
that's
flexibility.
correct. All right. Time up. Actually, we are over time, and it's a wealth of information. Parenting is not only a one subject, and I think every family, regardless of their background or ethnicity or religion, they need that subject. They are all of us agree about the education and not necessarily the education of the children, but the education and taking care of the children, regardless of who you are, where you come from, and what do you believe. Most likely is the same. Maybe the priority is a little bit different, but the base and the foundations mostly very similar. And I think more to come with this, and we talk more about that, and we share information and we learn from each other's. And at this point, we are done. Imam Ihab, do you have something to say, or do you want to say something? The mic. Unmute.
You hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Absolutely, we get benefit from that lectures. And I think it's an open topic. We need to spread this word for more families and more classes. It's not one class is enough. So I'm thinking to make it more than one, inshallah, and spread that between the parents and the families in the community, inshallah. I want to thank our guests, Brother Usman, and especially thanking for Sister Caroline and Brother Chaplain Darin and Brother Muhammad Sulaiman, moderator. MashaAllah, it was very, very beneficial, very absolutely very good for all, inshallah. Thank you so much.
Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, and take care, everyone.